46 men have held the most powerful office on earth. Each president shaped history with their choices and their mistakes. This is the story of their greatest triumphs and the failures that haunt their names forever. We begin where America itself began, with George Washington. Please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment the next video topic in the comments. Washington's triumph was refusing to become a king. When offered absolute power, he walked away instead. His failure was owning over 300 enslaved people. Washington built a nation but denied freedom to hundreds. John Adams avoided war with France when most demanded it. His restraint saved thousands of lives and America's economy. But Adams signed the Alien and Sedition Acts. These laws criminalized criticism and destroyed free speech temporarily. Thomas Jefferson doubled America's size with the Louisiana Purchase. For $15 million, he secured the continent's future. Jefferson's failure was the brutal embargo that crippled trade. American merchants went bankrupt while Britain barely noticed. James Madison gave us the Bill of Rights. These 10 amendments became freedom's permanent foundation in America. But Madison led America into the disastrous War of 1812. The British burned Washington and the White House to ashes. James Monroe established the doctrine that defined American foreign policy. The Monroe Doctrine warned Europe to stay out of the Americas. Monroe's failure was signing the Missouri Compromise on slavery. This compromise delayed war, but guaranteed its eventual horror. John Quincy Adams fought slavery relentlessly after his presidency. He spent 17 years in Congress defending human freedom. But his actual presidency was marked by total political failure. Congress blocked every major initiative, rendering him nearly powerless. Andrew Jackson destroyed the corrupt Second Bank of the United States. His war against financial elites made him a champion of common people. Jackson's unforgivable failure was the Trail of Tears. 16,000 Cherokee were forcibly marched, 4,000 died. Martin Van Buren established the independent treasury system. This separated government money from risky private banks permanently. But Van Buren refused to help during the economic depression. Thousands starved while he insisted government should do nothing. William Henry Harrison died after just 31 days in office. John Tyler became president and immediately betrayed his own party. Tyler's one triumph was annexing Texas into the Union. But this annexation pushed America closer to civil war. James Polk expanded America to the Pacific Ocean. He achieved every single goal he set in just 4 years. Polk's failure was provoking an unjust war with Mexico. Thousands died for territory taken through manufactured conflict. Zachary Taylor was ready to fight the South over slavery. He died suddenly, and Millard Fillmore replaced courage with compromise. Fillmore signed the Fugitive Slave Act, his greatest shame. This law forced Northerners to return escaped slaves to bondage. Franklin Pierce opened Kansas and Nebraska to slavery expansion. This single act ignited bleeding Kansas and guaranteed civil war. Pierce accomplished nothing positive and is remembered only for failure. James Buchanan did absolutely nothing as the nation collapsed. He watched the South secede and called himself helpless. Historians rank Buchanan as America's worst president ever. Abraham Lincoln saved the Union from complete destruction. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation and ended slavery forever. Lincoln's failure was the immense cost of the war. 600,000 Americans died in the bloodiest war ever. Andrew Johnson became president after Lincoln's assassination. Johnson's only achievement was purchasing Alaska from Russia. But he sabotaged Reconstruction and betrayed freed slaves completely. Johnson became the first president ever impeached by Congress. Ulysses Grant crushed the Ku Klux Klan's terrorist campaign. He used federal troops to protect black voters in the South. Grant's failure was corruption throughout his administration completely. His closest allies stole millions while he remained willfully blind. Rutherford Hayes ended Reconstruction and abandoned the South. He traded black citizens' rights for his own political power. This betrayal led to decades of Jim Crow oppression. James Garfield fought against political corruption his entire career. He was assassinated just 6 months into his presidency. Garfield's death proved the need for civil service reform. Chester Arthur shocked everyone by actually fighting corruption. The former machine politician became an honest civil service reformer. Arthur's failure was doing almost nothing else of importance. Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms as president. His triumph was fighting corruption in both political parties. Cleveland's failure was his brutal response to labor strikes. He sent federal troops to crush workers fighting for basic rights. Benjamin Harrison expanded American territorial possessions significantly. He admitted 6 new states into the Union permanently. Harrison's failure was the massive economic depression he caused. William McKinley won the Spanish-American War in months. America became a global empire with colonies spanning the world. McKinley's failure was the brutal conquest of the Philippines. 200,000 Filipino civilians died resisting American occupation. McKinley was assassinated in 1901. Theodore Roosevelt transformed America into a progressive nation. He broke up monopolies and protected millions of workers. Roosevelt created the national parks and saved American wilderness. His failure was imperialist aggression throughout Latin America. Big stick diplomacy meant military intervention and permanent occupation. William Howard Taft broke up more monopolies than Roosevelt. He quietly continued progressive reform without the showmanship. Taft's failure was destroying his friendship with Roosevelt completely. Their split destroyed the Republican Party and cost both men power. Woodrow Wilson led America through the First World War. He proposed the League of Nations to prevent future wars. Wilson's failure was brutal racism and resegregating the government. He screamed "Birth of a Nation" at the White House. Wilson's racism revived the Ku Klux Klan across America. Warren Harding pardoned socialist Eugene Debs from prison. This act of mercy reunited Debs with his family. Harding's failure was unprecedented corruption throughout his administration. His cabinet members literally sold off America's oil reserves. Calvin Coolidge restored honesty after Harding's corruption scandals. He prosecuted the corrupt officials and cleaned house completely. Coolidge's failure was ignoring the coming economic disaster. He did nothing while reckless speculation built toward collapse. Herbert Hoover organized massive European famine relief efforts. He saved millions of lives after World War I. Hoover's failure was his disastrous response to the Depression. He insisted prosperity was just around the corner while millions starved. He sent the army to attack homeless veterans protesting. Franklin Roosevelt saved capitalism from complete collapse. The New Deal created jobs and restored hope to America. Roosevelt led the Allies to victory in World War II. He defeated Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan completely. Roosevelt's failure was the Japanese-American internment camps. Over 100,000 innocent citizens imprisoned without trial. Harry Truman desegregated the American military by executive order. This courageous order began the civil rights movement. Truman's failure was dropping atomic bombs on Japan. 200,000 civilians died instantly in nuclear fire. Dwight Eisenhower built the interstate highway system nationwide. These highways united America and transformed the economy forever. Eisenhower's failure was overthrowing democratic governments through CIA coups. He replaced elected leaders with dictators in Iran and Guatemala. John F. Kennedy peacefully ended the Cuban Missile Crisis. His negotiation prevented nuclear war and saved human civilization. Kennedy's failure was escalating American involvement in Vietnam. He sent 16,000 advisors into a war America couldn't win. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas in 1963. Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This law destroyed legal segregation across the entire South. Johnson created Medicare and declared war on poverty successfully. His failure was the catastrophic escalation of Vietnam. Johnson sent 500,000 troops into an unwinnable war. 58,000 Americans died for absolutely nothing. Richard Nixon opened diplomatic relations with Communist China. This strategic move changed the entire Cold War forever. Nixon's failure was Watergate and destroying the presidency's integrity. He ordered the break-in and lied repeatedly to cover it up. Nixon resigned in disgrace, the only president ever forced out. Gerald Ford restored calm after Nixon's constitutional crisis. He brought honesty and decency back to the White House. Ford's failure was pardoning Nixon before any prosecution. This pardon denied justice and protected a criminal president. Jimmy Carter brokered peace between Israel and Egypt. The Camp David Accords ended 30 years of war. Carter's failure was the Iran hostage crisis disaster. 52 Americans held captive for 444 days. The failed rescue attempt killed 8 American soldiers. Ronald Reagan demanded that Gorbachev tear down the Berlin Wall. 2 years later, the wall fell and communism collapsed. Reagan's failure was the Iran-Contra scandal's illegal operations. He sold weapons to Iran and funded terrorists illegally. Reagan ignored the AIDS crisis while thousands died needlessly. George Bush assembled the coalition that liberated Kuwait. Operation Desert Storm defeated Iraq in just 43 days. Bush's failure was breaking his no new taxes promise. This betrayal destroyed his credibility and cost him re-election. Bill Clinton balanced the federal budget for the first time in decades. He created 23 million new jobs and economic prosperity. Clinton's failure was the Monica Lewinsky scandal and impeachment. He lied under oath and became only the second president impeached. George W. Bush united America after the September 11th attacks. He stood at ground zero and rallied the grieving nation. Bush's failure was the catastrophic Iraq war based on lies. There were no weapons of mass destruction anywhere. 4,000 Americans died for a war built on deception. Bush ignored warnings and failed during Hurricane Katrina completely. Barack Obama passed the Affordable Care Act into law. 20 million Americans gained health insurance for the first time. Obama ordered the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Navy SEALs ended the decade-long manhunt successfully. Obama's failure was not closing Guantanamo Bay prison. He promised repeatedly, but left the prison open forever. Donald Trump passed significant criminal justice reform legislation. The First Step Act reduced unfair sentences for thousands. Trump's failure was his catastrophic COVID response disaster. Over 1 million Americans died from preventable COVID deaths. He lied repeatedly and told people to inject bleach. Trump incited the January 6th attack on the Capitol. He became the first president to attempt overthrowing democracy. Joe Biden passed the largest infrastructure investment in generations. The infrastructure bill repairs America's crumbling roads and bridges. Biden's failure was the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. 13 soldiers died and allies were abandoned completely. Every president achieved greatness in at least one moment. And every president failed catastrophically in at least one decision. The presidency reveals both human greatness and human weakness. These 46 leaders shaped the nation we live in today. Their triumphs and failures are America's triumphs and failures. And the judgment of history continues with every new president. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out. See you next video.